tapping out an LSU defense. That's exactly what you saw yesterday. Auburn 48. 48, friends. LSU 11. Do you remember last week when we were leading up to this game, and I kept talking about the entire the philosophy of Auburn buying time and all these beneficial calls that have gone their way from the SEC officials, ridiculous though they may be, I kept saying, all right, but we can't change those. All we can do is look from now forward. And from now forward, what could be happening is bad calls, fortuitous bounces for Auburn, whatever they are, they're buying them time. Because Auburn has not been a good football team. But yet they also weren't 1-4. And so they were sitting there kind of hovering, and they were still, you had some goals in front of them. And the entire reason that you keep that in mind is because Auburn is a team that eventually pops. So they popped yesterday. There you see it, a total body bag special. There was a padlock stat in this one. We thought it would be back and forth, 2-to-1 run-to-pass ratio roughly for both teams, and we thought the better run game was going to win. Boy, was that answered emphatically. Auburn, 206-32. That's the degree with which they outgained LSU on the ground. Like I said, we expected a 2-to-1 run-to-pass ratio. It kind of got flipped on its head once you have Auburn score. I think they scored in like 6 straight possessions. And here's what really sort of bent me out of shape. I'm over here across the walkway in our main office yesterday, and I feel so good, as do you if you rode the Ramen Noodle Express. We had under 65.5. And the entire premise on which that pick was built, our model didn't suggest it. That was a pure instinct play. And I thought that it just made a lot of sense because there have been some overinflated finals for these teams already this year. You know, the Mississippi State game is still baked into LSU. The Missouri game is still baked into LSU. Well, those were games where, number one, you had Miles Brennan at quarterback for LSU. Number two, folks are throwing the ball all over the yard. This game was going to be run-centric. And so run is exactly what the clock was going to do. That's how it started. This game was scoreless. Final score is 48-11. It was scoreless at the end of the first quarter. I almost strained my back. I was walking around with my chest poked out so proudly at how we had identified this game. And then Auburn, boom, 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 boom. They go into the half scoring, they come out of the half scoring, defensive scores, and all of a sudden it got out of whack. Fortunately, things regained a sense of control, and we did hit our under, but I thought we were in trouble there for a little while. Auburn led 21-3 at the half. It was over at the half. I wrote this down. I said, this game's over right now. Auburn led 21-3. They had a 6.2 to 1.9 yards per carry advantage. And you may think to yourself, oh, it'll get better. No, LSU's final yards per carry statistics were even worse than that. I got it written down somewhere. I'll find it later. But here's what's most encouraging, because here's what you got to ask yourself now about Auburn. You've seen teams like Mississippi State beat LSU, and it's been a total island into the rest of their season. Didn't mean anything. Well, what does this win mean for Auburn? Moving forward, not yesterday. Yesterday it meant everything. Moving forward, can you take something from this? Can you glean something from this that tells you, all right, Auburn just turned a corner yesterday? Maybe, maybe not. But I will tell you what I noticed. What I noticed is defensively, I thought, well, clearly they played the best that they've played all year. They had 4 sacks. Defensive line, I thought, was as healthy as they've been all year. 4 sacks, 7 tackles for loss, and they ended up giving up, here's the number, 1.2 yards per carry to LSU. LSU 32 yards rushing in the game. So they finally go off. Bo Nix had a really good day. He was 18-24 for 300. He ran it 11 times for 81 yards too. He took no sacks. Auburn's offensive line, which was a concern, losing Brandon Council, they gave up no sacks. He threw no interceptions. They had a lot of their more classical spread to run concepts. LSU very poor fitting gaps. I think they admitted as much after the game. Auburn scored 48 points on 6 possessions. There was a defensive score mixed in there. So how much stock do we put in it? I think I'm putting a little more stock in this for Auburn than I did for Mississippi State. However, I'm also not coronating them as a presumptive challenger to Alabama in the West. But LSU is just a mess right now. And I want to tell you, yesterday, for those of you who follow recruiting, there was a big-time recruiting win that LSU had over Alabama. Sage Ryan, 5-star safety from Louisiana, was thought to be an LSU lock for a while. Alabama made it a battle seemingly out of nowhere late. LSU kept him home, well, at least verbally. I mean, anything can happen, but he's verbally committed to LSU now. I'm going to tell you, and I'm not alone in thinking this, I think that recruitment meant so much to LSU that staff was legitimately distracted by it during the week. I don't think they were prepared to play yesterday. And I think it showed on the field. But I'm telling you, and I'm not alone in thinking this, I think that recruitment and the symbolism of not letting Alabama come into their state and beat them for a kid, they put so much emphasis in it and pressure on themselves to make sure it didn't happen. I thought it actually affected their preparation for this game. Can't prove that, but I think it happened. Quarterback was irrelevant here. Their offensive line didn't give them a chance to win. Defense, non-existent, didn't give them a chance to win. No running back in this game for LSU had a carry of more than 8 yards. And this is coming off a game against South Carolina where their running game arrived, allegedly. So, I mean, LSU, they have now given up defensively 40-plus points to Mississippi State, who's a complete and total joke offensively right now, Missouri, who couldn't do anything against Florida yesterday, and Auburn. 40-plus points defensively, LSU's defense has given up to them. So they are now 2-3, the LSU Tigers. They've got Bama left. There will be no punches pulled in that game, friends. We'll get to it. That's 2 weeks away. They have to go to Florida. They got to go to A&M. They got to go to Arkansas, and they got Ole Miss. It's not a good situation behind the scenes at LSU.